Act dumb. You will get further. The psychology of winning. Chapter 1. The power of being underestimated. Imagine walking into a room where no one expects anything from you. No one watches your every move. No one sees you as competition. No one feels threatened by your presence. Most people would see that as a disadvantage. But history tells a different story. Again and again, the people who achieved the most were often the ones others overlooked. They weren't always the loudest, the most charismatic, or the quickest to prove their intelligence. Instead, they understood something few people ever learn. Being underestimated is often one of the greatest advantages you can have. We live in a world obsessed with appearing impressive. People compete to sound smarter. They argue to prove they're right. They chase recognition, titles, followers, and applause. Every conversation becomes an opportunity to display knowledge. Every achievement becomes another badge to show the world. But there's a hidden cost to constantly proving yourself. The moment people recognize your strengths, they also begin preparing for them. They become cautious. They compete harder. They question your motives. They watch your mistakes more closely. Success attracts attention. But attention also creates resistance. The more visible you become, the more obstacles appear. The wise understand that not every battle needs to be announced. Sometimes the greatest advantage is moving quietly. Consider the game of chess. The strongest players rarely attack recklessly in the opening. They develop their pieces patiently. They allow the game to unfold. To an inexperienced observer, their moves may even seem ordinary, but beneath the surface, every quiet move is building toward an unstoppable position. Life works much the same way. Many people mistake silence for weakness. They confuse humility with insecurity. They assume that someone who speaks less knows less. And that's exactly why they lose. The loudest person in the room often reveals everything. What they know, what they fear, what they want, and what they value. The quiet observer learns all of this while revealing almost nothing about themselves. Information is power. The person who collects more information while giving away less holds the advantage. This principle has appeared throughout history. Military strategists understood it. Successful negotiators rely on it. Elite intelligence agencies are built upon it. Even nature demonstrates it. The lion doesn't roar while hunting. The eagle doesn't announce its dive. The spider doesn't warn the fly before weaving its trap. Power rarely advertises itself. It simply acts. There is another reason being underestimated is so valuable. People naturally lower their guard around those they don't see as a threat. They speak more freely. They reveal their plans. They expose their weaknesses. They underestimate your potential. This creates opportunities that would never exist if you constantly demanded recognition. Ironically, many of life's biggest opportunities come disguised as disrespect. Someone overlooks you for a promotion. Someone dismisses your ideas. Someone assumes you're inexperienced. Your ego wants to correct them. Your pride wants to prove them wrong immediately. But wisdom whispers something different. Let them think what they want, not because they're right, but because proving yourself too early often costs more than staying patient. Patience is a weapon. When expectations are low, every success creates surprise. When expectations are high, even excellence feels ordinary. This is why many of the world's most successful people learn to embrace being underestimated instead of fighting it. They focus on improving, not impressing. They built skills instead of reputations. They invested in results rather than appearances. Because appearances fade, results endure. There is a quiet confidence that comes from not needing validation. It doesn't rush to speak. It doesn't interrupt. It doesn't argue over every disagreement. It understands that truth doesn't require applause. Strength doesn't need permission. And intelligence doesn't need constant display. One of the greatest mistakes intelligent people make is believing everyone needs to know they're intelligent. But real wisdom recognizes something deeper. The smartest person in the room isn't always the one speaking. Often it's the one listening, the one asking thoughtful questions, the one observing patterns everyone else misses, the one who leaves a room knowing more than when they entered. Imagine carrying a priceless jewel through a crowded marketplace. Would you hold it high above your head for everyone to see? Or would you keep it safely hidden until the right moment? Your abilities are no different. Not every gift needs immediate exposure. Not every victory needs public celebration. Not every opinion deserves expression. There's tremendous power in restraint. Restraint is not weakness. It is discipline. And discipline creates freedom. When you stop trying to impress everyone, something remarkable happens. You begin noticing things others miss. You become more curious. You ask better questions. You listen without preparing your next response. You become a student again. And students always outgrow those who believe they've already mastered everything. This doesn't mean pretending to be incapable. It doesn't mean lacking ambition. It doesn't mean allowing others to mistreat you. It means refusing to let your ego control your actions. It means understanding that there is a difference between being underestimated and underestimating yourself. One is a gift. The other is a prison. Never confuse the two. Know your value, even if others don't. Believe in your abilities without announcing them. Build your skills quietly. Let your work become your voice. Because eventually, results become impossible to ignore. By the time people realize what you're capable of, you'll already be several steps ahead. The world rewards those who create value, not those who merely advertise it. So don't fear being overlooked. Don't rush to prove your intelligence. Don't waste your energy convincing people who have already made up their minds. Keep learning. Keep growing. Keep moving. Quietly, patiently, deliberately. Because sometimes the greatest advantage in life isn't being recognized. It's being underestimated. Chapter 2, The Ego Trap. There's an invisible enemy that has ruined more careers, broken more relationships, and destroyed more opportunities than a lack of talent ever could. It isn't bad luck. It isn't a lack of intelligence. It isn't failure. It is ego. Ego is not confidence. The two are often confused, but they are opposites. Confidence is quiet. It comes from competence, experience, and self-belief. It doesn't need constant reassurance because it already knows its worth. Ego, on the other hand, is always hungry. It craves recognition. It demands validation. It wants to be admired, respected, and acknowledged. It constantly whispers, make sure they know how smart you are. Don't let them think you're weak. Prove yourself. And so, people spend their lives performing instead of progressing. Think about how many arguments begin with a simple disagreement, but quickly turn into battles over who is right. At first, the discussion is about ideas. Before long, it becomes about identity. The goal is no longer to discover the truth. The goal is to win. That is ego at work. It convinces you that every criticism is an attack. Every challenge is a threat. Every disagreement is a personal insult. The result is predictable. Instead of learning, you defend. Instead of listening, you interrupt. Instead of growing, you protect an image of yourself that exists only in your own mind. The ancient Stoic philosopher Epictetus offered a timeless reminder. It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows. Those words reveal one of life's greatest paradoxes. The moment you believe you have nothing left to learn is the moment you stop growing. History is filled with brilliant people who lost everything because their ego convinced them they were untouchable. Empires have fallen because leaders refuse to listen. Businesses have collapsed because executives ignored criticism. Athletes have declined because they believe they no longer needed to improve. Talent can open the door. Ego often closes it. The most dangerous thing about ego is that it disguises itself as strength. It tells you to speak first. It tells you to have the final word. It tells you never to admit a mistake. It tells you that apologizing makes you weak. But true strength often looks very different. Real strength is admitting when you're wrong. Real strength is changing your mind when presented with better evidence. Real strength is saying, I don't know. Those three words are difficult for the ego to speak. Yet they are often the beginning of wisdom. Imagine entering every conversation believing that the other person knows something you don't. Even if they know only one thing you haven't learned, that conversation becomes valuable. This mindset transforms ordinary interactions into opportunities for growth. The ego says, teach them. Wisdom says, learn from them. Consider the bamboo tree. For years after it's planted, almost nothing appears above the ground. To an impatient observer, it looks as though nothing is happening. But beneath the surface, an enormous root system is spreading, strengthening, and preparing for future growth. Only later does a bamboo shoot upward with astonishing speed. People often live the opposite way. They focus on appearing successful before they have built a foundation to sustain success. They chase applause before mastery, recognition before wisdom, status before substance. The ego wants the spotlight immediately. Patience builds a stage. One of the greatest signs of maturity is no longer needing to win every conversation. Not every misunderstanding needs correction. Not every insult deserves a response. Not every opinion requires your approval. Sometimes the strongest move is silence. Silence frustrates the ego because silence receives no applause. But silence creates space. It allows emotions to settle. It allows perspective to return. It allows you to choose your response instead of reacting impulsively. A person controlled by ego reacts. A person guided by wisdom responds. There's a profound difference. Reaction is emotional. Response is intentional. One is automatic. The other is chosen. The world constantly rewards those who can control themselves. The negotiator who remains calm under pressure often secures the better deal. The leader who listens before speaking earns greater trust. The entrepreneur who accepts criticism improves faster than the one who rejects it. The student who asks questions learns more than the one pretending to have all the answers. In every field, humility quietly outperforms arrogance. This is why the truly accomplished rarely spend time announcing their accomplishments. They are too busy improving. The mountain does not boast about its height. The ocean does not advertise its depth. Their presence speaks for itself. Your work should do the same. Imagine carrying a cup filled to the very top with water. Any additional drop spills over the edge. Now imagine an empty cup. It can receive more. The ego wants to become the full cup. Wisdom chooses to remain empty enough to keep learning. Every expert was once a beginner. Every master was once a student. The moment they stopped learning would have been the moment they stopped becoming masters. The irony is almost poetic. The people who spend the least time trying to appear intelligent are often the ones who become the most intelligent, because they're free. Free to ask questions. Free to make mistakes. Free to be corrected. Free to evolve. Meanwhile, those imprisoned by ego remain trapped inside an identity they're too afraid to challenge. They mistake certainty for wisdom, pride for confidence, noise for influence. But life has a way of humbling everyone. The only question is whether you choose humility before life chooses it for you. The strongest tree bends with the wind. The rigid one eventually breaks. The same is true of people. Flexibility is not weakness. Humility is not surrender. They are forms of resilience. When your identity is no longer tied to always being right, you become fearless. You can admit mistakes without shame. You can change your opinion without embarrassment. You can celebrate someone else's success without feeling diminished, because your value no longer depends on comparison. It depends on character. The next time your ego urges you to prove yourself, pause. Ask yourself a simple question. Am I trying to become better or merely look better? That single question can change the course of your life, because the greatest victories are rarely won over other people. They are won over the part of yourself that constantly demands recognition. Master your ego, and you will no longer need to prove your intelligence. Your actions will speak more clearly than your words ever could. Chapter 3. Listen more than you speak. Walk into any crowded room, and you'll notice something interesting. Most people are waiting for their turn to talk. They nod politely. They maintain eye contact. They even ask questions. But while the other person is speaking, their mind is somewhere else, preparing a response, searching for the perfect story, or thinking about how to sound impressive. Very few people are truly listening, and that is why listening has become one of the rarest and most valuable skills in the modern world. We often associate influence with powerful speeches, persuasive arguments, and clever words. But the greatest communicators understand a secret that many overlook. People don't feel connected to those who talk the most. They feel connected to those who make them feel heard. Think about the conversations you've enjoyed the most. Was it because the other person talked endlessly about themselves? Or was it because they listened with genuine curiosity? Most likely, it was the latter. People remember how you made them feel far longer than they remember what you said. When someone feels understood, they naturally trust you, and trust is a foundation of every meaningful relationship, whether in business, friendship, leadership, or love. Listening is not passive. It is active observation. When you truly listen, you hear more than words. You notice hesitation. You recognize excitement. You detect fear hidden behind confidence. You begin to understand not only what people say, but why they say it. That understanding gives you something no amount of talking ever can: perspective. Imagine entering a negotiation. One person dominates the conversation, explaining every detail of their plan, revealing their priorities, and defending every position. The other person listens. They ask thoughtful questions. They encourage the first person to keep talking. By the end of the meeting, who holds more information? Almost always, the listener. Information is one of the most valuable forms of power. The person who gathers it patiently has an advantage over the person who gives it away freely. This is why experienced investigators ask more questions than they answer. It is why skilled negotiators remain comfortable with silence. It is why wise leaders spend more time understanding than commanding. Silence has a remarkable effect on people. Most individuals are uncomfortable with it. When a conversation pauses, they rush to fill the empty space. They reveal another detail. They explain themselves further. Sometimes, they even disclose information they never intended to share. The patient listener simply waits, not to manipulate, but to understand. There's a profound difference. Listening is not about remaining silent while secretly planning your next sentence. It is about setting your own thoughts aside long enough to enter someone else's world. That requires humility. It requires curiosity. And above all, it requires discipline, because your ego constantly whispers, "Tell them what you know." Wisdom quietly replies, "Discover what they know." The greatest students of life never stop asking questions. Children instinctively understand this. They ask why, then they ask why again. They are not embarrassed by curiosity. They are driven by it. Somewhere along the way, many adults lose that habit. They begin pretending to know instead of admitting they don't. Their questions become fewer. Their assumptions become greater, and their growth slows. Curiosity is not a sign of ignorance. It is a sign of intelligence. Every meaningful discovery in history began with a question. Every invention, every scientific breakthrough, every philosophical insight. Someone was willing to say, "I don't understand. Help me see." That sentence has opened more doors than certainty ever could. Listening also protects you from one of the most common mistakes people make: speaking too soon. How many times have you interrupted someone only to realize they weren't finished? How often have you assumed you understood, only to discover later that you misunderstood completely? Patience prevents unnecessary mistakes. It gives truth time to emerge. In nature, the hunter observes before acting. The eagle circles high above before descending. The wolf studies a movement of the herd before choosing a direction. Action without observation wastes energy. The same principle applies to life. Observe first, act second. One of the greatest advantages of listening is that it teaches you about people. Everyone reveals themselves eventually, not because they intend to, but because patterns always emerge. The impatient reveal their impulsiveness. The arrogant reveal their insecurity. The generous reveal their character. The fearful reveal their doubts. If you pay attention long enough, people will show you exactly who they are. Words matter, but consistency matters more. A wise listener notices both. This is why first impressions are often misleading. A confident speaker may lack substance. A quiet individual may possess extraordinary wisdom. If you judge too quickly, you risk overlooking remarkable people. Listening keeps your mind open long enough to discover the truth. There's another hidden benefit. The more you listen, the less you feel compelled to prove yourself. Conversations stop becoming competitions. They become opportunities to learn. And learning compounds. Every person you meet knows something you do not. The mechanic understands machines. The artist sees beauty where others see ordinary objects. The farmer understands patience. The teacher understands growth. The child understands wonder. If you approach each conversation believing there is something to learn, life itself becomes your greatest classroom. The most successful leaders understand this principle deeply. They don't surround themselves with people who simply agree. They seek different perspectives. They invite criticism. They ask difficult questions because they know that better decisions come from better information, and better information comes from careful listening. There's an old saying, wise men speak because they have something to say. Fools speak because they have to say something. Whether or not those exact words matter, the lesson certainly does. Not every silence needs to be filled. Not every opinion needs to be expressed. Sometimes your greatest contribution is your attention. Attention is one of the rarest gifts you can offer another person. In a world overflowed with distractions, giving someone your full attention is an act of respect, and respect is remembered. As you begin listening more, you will notice subtle changes. People will trust you more. They will confide in you more easily. They will seek your advice because they know you first seek to understand. Ironically, speaking less often gives your words greater weight. When you rarely interrupt, when you choose your words carefully, when you speak only after listening, people pay attention because they know your words are thoughtful, not impulsive. The goal is not to become silent. The goal is to become intentional. Speak when your words add value. Listen when they don't. Observe before you judge. Ask before you assume. Understand before you respond. The loudest voice may capture attention for a moment, but the quiet listener often earns something far more valuable: wisdom, trust, and influence, because in the end, the people who learn the most are rarely the ones doing all the talking. Chapter 4. Never show all your cards. Imagine sitting across from an opponent in a high-stakes game of poker. Before the first hand is even played, one player smiles confidently and lays every card face up on the table. Their strongest hand, their weakest hand, their strategy, their intentions. The game is over before it has truly begun. No skilled player would make such a mistake. Yet countless people do exactly this in everyday life. They reveal every ambition. They announce every plan. They display every skill the moment they enter a room. They believe transparency is always strength, but often it is simply vulnerability. One of the greatest forms of power is not deception. It is discretion. There's a profound difference. Deception hides the truth to manipulate. Discretion protects the truth until the right moment. Wise people understand this distinction. They don't lie about their abilities. They simply don't feel compelled to advertise them. The world encourages constant self-promotion. Social media rewards visibility. Workplaces often celebrate those who speak the loudest. Conversations become competitions where everyone is trying to prove how successful, knowledgeable, or important they are. But beneath all that noise lies an uncomfortable reality. The more you reveal about yourself, the easier you become to predict, and predictability reduces your advantage. History offers countless examples of this principle. Military commanders rarely announce their battle plans before the fight. Great chess players conceal their true intentions behind ordinary moves. Master negotiators seldom reveal their bottom line at the beginning of a discussion. Success often belongs to those who understand the value of patience. Life is no different. When you tell everyone about your dreams, two things happen. Some people doubt you, others envy you, and many begin forming opinions long before you've accomplished anything. Their expectations become another burden to carry. Sometimes, the greatest progress happens in private. A seed grows underground long before anyone sees the first green shoot. The sculptor spends months shaping stone before unveiling the finished masterpiece. The writer fills page after page before publishing a single book. Creation thrives in quiet places. Not every stage of your journey requires an audience. There is another reason to keep your plans close. Talking about success can create the illusion of success. Have you ever noticed how satisfying it feels to tell someone about an exciting goal? That feeling is real. Your brain often rewards the announcement almost as if the achievement has already happened. The applause arrives before the work is finished. And sometimes that applause steals the motivation needed to complete the task. Action becomes replaced by intention. Progress becomes replaced by performance. The wise reverse the order. They work first. They speak later. Results become the announcement. Imagine two builders constructing identical houses. The first tells everyone exactly how magnificent the finished home will be. Every day, they describe the future. The second says very little. They simply continue laying bricks. Months later, only one house stands complete. The world remembers what was built, not what was promised. This is why discipline matters more than excitement. Excitement talks. Discipline works. There's also a deeper psychological advantage to holding something back. Mystery creates respect. People naturally become curious about what they cannot fully understand. The individual who constantly explains themselves often appears uncertain. The person who remains calm, focused, and measured creates an air of confidence, not because they are hiding, but because they know their worth doesn't depend on constant explanation. Confidence rarely shouts. It doesn't need to. A mountain never announces its height. The ocean never declares its depth. Their presence is enough. The same should be true of your character. One of the greatest mistakes ambitious people make is believing that everyone deserves access to their vision. Not everyone does. Some people encourage your growth. Others quietly discourage it. Some celebrate your success. Others secretly hope you fail. Learning to distinguish between the two is an essential life skill. Protecting your dreams isn't pessimism. It's wisdom. A gardener doesn't expose fragile seedlings to a violent storm. They nurture them until they're strong enough to withstand the wind. Your goals deserve the same care. That doesn't mean living in secrecy or isolation. It means becoming selective. Share your vision with those who support your growth. Share your progress with those who have earned your trust. But don't confuse public attention with meaningful encouragement. The loudest applause is not always the most sincere. There is another lesson hidden here. When you stop trying to impress people, you begin impressing yourself. Your motivation shifts. Instead of asking, "What will people think?" you begin asking, "Am I becoming the person I want to be?" That question changes everything. Because real success is built in private moments. It is built when no one is watching, when no one is applauding, when no one knows how hard you're working. Anyone can appear disciplined for a day. Character is revealed over years. This is why quiet consistency always defeats loud ambition. Consistency compounds. Tiny efforts repeated daily become extraordinary results. Most people never witness the countless unseen hours behind greatness. They see the performance. They miss the preparation. They admire the harvest. They overlook the seasons of planting. The truth is simple. Every masterpiece spends far more time unfinished than complete. Accept that process. Protect it. Trust it. There will always be pressure to prove yourself early, to reveal everything you know, to announce every achievement, to chase immediate recognition. Resist that temptation, not because recognition is wrong, but because premature recognition often distracts from lasting excellence. There is freedom in moving quietly, freedom from comparison, freedom from unnecessary expectations, freedom from constantly seeking approval. You begin working for your own standards instead of someone else's applause. And when the time finally comes to reveal what you've built, you won't need convincing words. You won't need elaborate explanations. You won't need to prove your value. Your results will speak with a voice no argument can silence. Remember this. An arrow travels farthest after being pulled back. A tree grows strongest before it rises high. And the most remarkable transformations often happen where no one is looking. So guard your vision. Protect your progress. Build in silence. Let your actions mature before your announcements. Because those who reveal everything too early often sacrifice tomorrow for today's attention. But those who master patience leave the world wondering how they accomplished so much without ever making a sound. Chapter 5. Let others feel smarter. Imagine meeting two people. The first spends every conversation correcting others. They finish your sentences. They point out your mistakes. They always have a better story, a better idea, or a better answer. When you leave the conversation, you remember one thing, how small they made you feel. Now imagine someone completely different. They ask thoughtful questions. They encourage your opinions. They genuinely listen. When you speak, they don't rush to interrupt or prove you wrong. Instead, they make you feel valued. When the conversation ends, you walk away feeling more confident than when it began. Which person would you rather see again? The answer is obvious. Yet, many people spend their lives trying to be the first person. They believe intelligence is measured by how often they prove others wrong. In reality, wisdom is often measured by how often you make others feel respected. One of the greatest misunderstandings about influence is the belief that people follow the smartest person in the room. They rarely do. People follow the person who makes them feel understood. Knowledge may earn admiration. Respect earns loyalty. There's an important difference. Admiration can disappear overnight. Loyalty survives difficult times. If you truly want influence, stop trying to impress people. Start trying to understand them. Human beings have a deep psychological need to feel important, not superior, not worshipped, simply important. We all want our thoughts to matter, our experiences to be acknowledged, our voices to be heard. When someone satisfies that need, trust begins to grow naturally. This doesn't require manipulation. It requires generosity. A generous listener gives attention without expecting applause. A generous leader shares credit instead of collecting it. A generous friend celebrates another person's success without turning the conversation back to themselves. These acts appear small, but they leave lasting impressions. Think about the greatest teachers you've ever had. Were they obsessed with proving how much they knew? Or were they focused on helping you discover what you were capable of? The best mentors rarely dominate conversations. Instead, they ask questions that lead you toward your own understanding. They allow you to feel ownership of your growth. That is true influence. It doesn't control. It empowers. The ego struggles with this idea. It wants recognition. It wants to be the source of every good idea. It wants people to say, "You're the smartest person I've ever met." But wise people understand something different. They know that if everyone leaves a conversation admiring you, you've gained attention. If everyone leaves believing more in themselves, you've gained influence. Those are not the same thing. History quietly rewards a second. Some of the most respected leaders were not remembered because they constantly displayed their brilliance. They were remembered because they inspired brilliance in others. They created environments where people felt safe to contribute, safe to ask questions, safe to admit mistakes. That safety unlocks creativity. Fear suppresses potential. Respect reveals it. Imagine holding a candle in a dark room. If your goal is simply make your own candle appear brightest, you might extinguish every other flame. The room becomes darker for everyone. But if you use your candle to light another, and another, and another, soon the entire room is illuminated. Your own light has not diminished. It has multiplied. Knowledge works the same way. Helping others shine never makes you dimmer. It makes the entire environment stronger. One of the simplest ways to practice this principle is through your conversations. When someone shares an idea, resist the urge to immediately improve it. Ask them to explain further. When someone tells a story, don't interrupt with your own. Let them finish. When someone succeeds, celebrate them without mentioning your own achievements. These habits require discipline because the ego constantly seeks attention. But attention is temporary. Connection is lasting. There is another remarkable benefit to letting others feel smart. People become more willing to teach you. Imagine asking an expert for advice while pretending you already know everything. The conversation ends quickly. Now imagine approaching the same expert with genuine curiosity. You ask thoughtful questions. You listen carefully. You appreciate their experience. Most experts become eager to share what they've learned. People enjoy helping those who respect their knowledge. Humility opens doors that pride keeps locked. This is why the greatest learners often appear to know less than they actually do, not because they lack confidence, but because curiosity matters more to them than appearances. They would rather gain wisdom than win admiration. The world often misunderstands humility. Some mistake it for weakness. Others mistake it for insecurity. Neither is true. Humility is confidence without the need for applause. It is strength that doesn't seek validation. It is intelligence comfortable enough to keep learning. There's an old principle in leadership. People support what they help create. Think about that for a moment. When people feel that their ideas matter, when they believe their voice has been heard, when they see their contributions respected, their commitment grows. They don't feel managed. They feel invested. That is why the greatest leaders ask more questions than they give orders. They know that ownership creates motivation. Imagine trying to push a heavy cart uphill by yourself. Now imagine 10 people pulling it together because they believe the destination belongs to all of them. The difference is extraordinary. Influence is rarely about force. It is about invitation. Invite people to think. Invite them to contribute. Invite them to grow. You don't lose authority by sharing the spotlight. You strengthen it. The sun never competes with the stars. Each has its own time to shine. Likewise, your value doesn't depend on being the smartest person in every room. Sometimes your greatest contribution is creating a room where everyone else becomes smarter. Ironically, people often assume the quiet facilitator possesses greater wisdom than the loud expert, because confidence without insecurity is unmistakable. It doesn't interrupt. It doesn't dominate. It doesn't constantly remind others of its achievements. It simply creates space for excellence to emerge. The next time you enter a conversation, try a different goal. Instead of asking, "How can I impress them?" ask, "How can I make them feel respected?" That one question transforms the entire interaction. You listen more carefully. You speak more thoughtfully. You become genuinely interested instead of merely interesting. And something remarkable happens. People begin seeking your company. They trust your judgment. They remember your kindness. Not because you demanded attention, but because you gave it. In the end, influence is not measured by how many people admire your intelligence. It is measured by how many people become better because they cross your path. So, let others have their moment. Let them explain. Let them teach. Let them feel valued. Because the person who needs to prove they're the smartest rarely is, but the person is secure enough to help others feel smart, has already mastered something far greater than intelligence. They have mastered themselves. Chapter 6. Learn like a beginner. There is a curious paradox about knowledge. The more you truly learn, the more you realize how little you know. At first, this realization can feel unsettling. We spend much of our lives believing that intelligence means having answers. We admire experts who speak with certainty and confidence. We assume that the wisest person is the one who always knows what to do. But reality tells a different story. The wisest people are often the first to admit they don't have all the answers. They understand that certainty can become a prison. Curiosity, on the other hand, is freedom. Every child enters the world with what psychologists call a beginner's mind. Everything is fascinating. A butterfly, a puddle after the rain, the sound of thunder. A simple cardboard box can become a castle, a spaceship, or a secret hideout. Children aren't embarrassed by what they don't know. They expect not to know. That expectation becomes their greatest strength. They ask questions without shame. They experiment without fear. They fail without believing failure defines them. Somewhere along the journey to adulthood, many people lose this gift. Instead of asking questions, they begin protecting their image. Instead of exploring, they start pretending. Instead of learning, they become experts in appearing knowledgeable. And slowly, their growth begins to fade. Imagine carrying an empty backpack. Every lesson, every conversation, every mistake becomes something you can place inside it. Now imagine carrying a backpack already stuffed to the point where nothing else fits. No matter how valuable the lesson may be, there is simply no room. The mind works the same way. When you believe you already know enough, there is no space left for new understanding. That is why humility is one of the greatest intellectual advantages a person can possess. Humility doesn't say, "I know nothing." It says, "There's always more to learn." The difference is profound. One is self-doubt. The other is endless possibility. Many of history's greatest innovators shared this mindset. They questioned assumptions that everyone else accepted. They were willing to look foolish. They asked what others considered obvious. They approached familiar problems with fresh eyes. And because they did, They discovered possibilities that have been hidden in plain sight. Most breakthroughs begin with a simple question. Why? Why not? What if we've been looking at this the wrong way? These questions belong to beginners. Experts often become trapped by what they already believe. Beginners are free. Freedom is one of the greatest advantages of not pretending to know everything. Consider a traveler arriving in a foreign country. If they assume they already understand a culture, they will miss countless lessons. But if they arrive with curiosity, every street becomes a classroom. Every conversation becomes a teacher. Every mistake becomes an education. Life itself is a foreign country. No matter how experienced you become, there will always be new landscapes to explore. The day you stop being curious is the day life begins repeating itself. One of the greatest barriers to learning is the fear of appearing foolish. People avoid asking questions because they worry others will judge them. They stay silent in meetings. They nod even when they don't understand. They pretend to follow conversations while secretly feeling lost. Ironically, the few seconds of embarrassment they hope to avoid often become years of missed understanding. There is remarkable courage in saying, "Could you explain that?" Or, "I don't understand yet." Those simple sentences demonstrate confidence, not weakness. Only insecure people pretend to know everything. Secure people are comfortable learning in public. There is another benefit to approaching life as a beginner. You become difficult to deceive. That may sound surprising. After all, wouldn't an expert be harder to fool? Not always. Experts sometimes trust their own assumptions too much. They stop verifying. They stop questioning. They become overconfident. A beginner examines carefully. They notice details others overlook because they haven't yet decided what is supposed to happen. Fresh eyes often see what experienced eyes ignore. This principle applies far beyond learning new skills. It applies to relationships. How often do we assume we know someone because we've known them for years? We stop asking questions. We stop listening carefully. We assume tomorrow's version of them will be identical to yesterday's. But people change. Dreams change. Fears change. Priorities change. Approaching even familiar people with fresh curiosity keeps relationships alive. The same is true of success. Many people reach a small achievement and begin believing they've arrived. Their learning slows. Their effort declines. Their confidence quietly transforms into complacency. Meanwhile, someone with less experience continues learning every day. Eventually, the student surpasses a master, not because they were more talented, because they never stopped being a student. There's a beautiful lesson hidden in nature. A river remains fresh because it keeps moving. A pond becomes stagnant because it stands still. Knowledge follows the same law. Keep learning, and your mind remains alive. Stop learning, and even yesterday's wisdom begins to lose its value. The world changes. Technology changes. People change. The person who refuses to change eventually falls behind. Learning is not something you finish. It is something you practice. Every conversation offers a lesson. Every mistake offers feedback. Every failure contains information, but only if you are willing to see it. Imagine two artists standing before the same blank canvas. One believes they have already mastered every technique. The other believes there is always another way to improve. 10 years later, who is likely to create the greater masterpiece? Talent matters. Practice matters more. But mindset matters most. A beginner's mindset transforms ordinary experiences into extraordinary teachers. Traffic teaches patience. Criticism teaches resilience. Failure teaches adjustment. Success teaches responsibility. Nothing is wasted. Everything becomes part of your education. This is why wise people are lifelong students. They read widely. They listen carefully. They ask thoughtful questions. They seek perspectives different from their own, not because they lack confidence, but because confidence without curiosity eventually becomes arrogance. One of the greatest gifts you can give yourself is permission not to know. Not knowing is not the problem. Refusing to learn is. The next time you enter a room filled with experts, don't feel intimidated. Feel grateful. You have entered a room full of potential teachers. The next time you make a mistake, don't ask, "How do I hide this?" Ask, what is this trying to teach me? That single shift transforms failure into fuel. Because every master was once a beginner. Every champion once struggled. Every inventor once failed. Every leader once doubted themselves. What separated them was not intelligence alone. It was their willingness to remain students long after everyone else believed they had become experts. So protect your curiosity. Guard your humility. Never allow your knowledge to become so heavy that it crushes your desire to learn. For the greatest advantage you will ever possess is not believing you are the smartest person in the room. It is walking into every room believing there is something there that can make you wiser. And as long as you continue learning like a beginner, you will never stop growing. Chapter 7. Emotional Control Beats Intelligence. Imagine placing a lit match beside a stick of dynamite. The match is tiny. The dynamite is powerful. Yet without control, something small can trigger an explosion that destroys everything. The same is true of the human mind. A single insult, one moment of anger, a careless comment, a bruised ego. These things seem insignificant, yet they have ended friendships, destroyed businesses, ruined marriages, and shattered careers. Not because people lacked intelligence, but because they lacked emotional control. There is a popular belief that success belongs to the smartest person in the room. Life repeatedly proves otherwise. The person with the highest IQ is not always the best leader. The most talented employee is not always promoted. The most gifted athlete is not always a champion. Why? Because intelligence helps you solve problems. Emotional control prevents you from becoming one. No matter how brilliant you are, your emotions will eventually test you. Someone will disrespect you. Someone will underestimate you. Someone will criticize your work. Someone will receive the opportunity you believe belonged to you. In those moments, your knowledge matters less than your response. Anyone can remain calm when life is easy. Character is revealed when life becomes difficult. Picture two captains sailing identical ships into a violent storm. The first captain panics. He shouts orders without thinking. He changes direction every few minutes. His fear spreads to the crew. Confusion follows. The second captain sees the same storm. He feels the same fear, but he refuses to let fear become the captain. His voice remains steady. His decisions remain deliberate. His crew finds confidence because their leader has mastered himself. The storm outside matters. The storm inside matters more. Every day, people surrender control of their emotions to complete strangers. A rude driver ruins their morning. A negative comment ruins their confidence. An unfair opinion ruins their peace. Think about that for a moment. Someone you've never met, someone who knows nothing about your dreams, can determine your emotional state for the rest of the day. That is not power. That is surrender. Real strength begins the moment you stop giving strangers control over your inner world. The ancient Stoics understood this deeply. They believed that while we cannot control every event, we can always control how we respond. This simple idea changes everything. You cannot control criticism. You can control whether criticism defines you. You cannot control rejection. You can control whether rejection stops you. You cannot control setbacks. You can control whether setbacks become excuses or lessons. Life constantly asks one question. Will you react or will you respond? There's an enormous difference. Reaction is immediate. Response is intentional. Reaction belongs to impulse. Response belongs to wisdom. Imagine throwing a stone into a calm lake. The ripples spread far beyond the point of impact. One emotional reaction works the same way. A harsh word creates another harsh word. Anger produces more anger. Panic creates more panic. Soon, the original problem is forgotten. Only the emotional damage remains. But calmness interrupts that cycle. Calmness absorbs chaos instead of multiplying it. This is why emotionally disciplined people appear so powerful. Not because they never feel emotion, but because emotion never controls their decisions. Many people misunderstand emotional control. They imagine it means becoming cold or emotionless. Nothing could be further from the truth. Emotional control is not the absence of feeling. It is the mastery of feeling. You still experience disappointment. You still experience frustration. You still experience fear. The difference is simple. You feel your emotions. You do not obey them. There is wisdom in the pause. Before answering an insult, pause. Before sending an angry message, pause. Before making an important decision, while upset, pause. That small space between emotion and action is where wisdom lives. One deep breath has prevented countless regrets. One night's sleep has saved countless relationships. One moment of patience has changed countless lives. The strongest people are rarely the loudest. They don't need to win every argument. They don't rush to defend every criticism. They understand that silence often carries more strength than shouting. Consider the bamboo tree during a storm. It bends, it sways, it appears fragile. Yet when the storm passes, it still stands. The rigid tree refuses to bend. Eventually, it snaps. Flexibility is not a weakness. It is survival. Emotionally intelligent people understand when to stand firm and when to let the moment pass. Not every battle deserves your energy. Not every opinion deserves your attention. Not every insult deserves your response. Sometimes the greatest victory is refusing to fight at all. There's another hidden advantage to emotional control. It allows you to think clearly. When anger takes control, logic disappears. When fear dominates, opportunities become invisible. When pride speaks, learning stops. But a calm mind sees possibilities that panic cannot. This is why great negotiators remain composed. Great surgeons stay steady. Great pilots remain calm during emergencies. Pressure doesn't create excellence. Preparation and emotional discipline do. Your greatest competition has never been another person. It has always been a version of yourself that reacts impulsively, the version that seeks revenge, the version that demands immediate satisfaction, the version that allows emotions to make permanent decisions based on temporary feelings. Master that version of yourself, and very few people will ever have power over you again. One of the most liberating realizations in life is this. You don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. You don't have to answer every insult. You don't have to prove yourself to everyone who misunderstands you. Peace is often protected by the opportunities you choose to ignore. Imagine carrying a backpack filled with stones. Every resentment, every grudge, every insult you refuse to release adds another stone. Eventually, the weight becomes exhausting. Forgiveness does not excuse what happened. It simply removes a stone from your own backpack. Emotional freedom begins when you stop carrying unnecessary burdens. The world will always contain difficult people, unfair situations, unexpected disappointments. You cannot eliminate them, but you can decide whether they become your master. Remember this. Anyone can control their behavior when everything goes according to plan. Only the disciplined can control themselves when life refuses to cooperate. And in the end, the person who masters their emotions will always have an advantage over the person who merely masters information, because intelligence may open the first door, but emotional control determines how far you will walk beyond it. The greatest victories are not won over competitors. They are won over the emotions that once controlled you. Master your mind, and the world becomes far less capable of mastering you. Chapter 8. The Long Game. Imagine two farmers standing in the same field. The first plants seeds in the morning. By evening, he becomes impatient. He digs into the soil to check whether anything is growing. The next day, he does it again and again. Eventually, the seeds die before they ever have a chance to take root. The second farmer plants the same seeds. Then he waits. He waters them. He protects them. He trusts the process. Weeks later, one field remains empty. The other begins to bloom. Life rewards the second farmer, not because he was luckier, because he understood something the first never did. Great things take time. We live in a world addicted to immediacy. Instant messages, instant delivery, instant entertainment, instant success stories. Everywhere we look, we are told that faster is better. If results don't appear quickly, we assume something is wrong. But nature has never worked that way. The tallest trees are not the fastest growing. Diamonds are not formed overnight. Masterpieces are not painted in a single afternoon. Everything of lasting value requires patience. Yet patience has become one of the rarest qualities in modern life. Most people want the reward without the waiting, the recognition without the work, the harvest without the planting. And because of that, they abandon dreams that were only months away from becoming reality. Success often belongs to the person who simply stayed longer. Think about a sculptor standing before a massive block of marble. With each strike of the chisel, almost nothing seems to change. One chip, then another. To an impatient observer, the work appears meaningless. But the sculptor knows every strike matters. Eventually, after thousands of careful blows, a masterpiece emerges. People admire the final sculpture. They rarely appreciate the thousands of invisible moments that created it. Your life is shaped the same way. Every disciplined choice, every hour spent learning, every temptation resisted, every promise you keep to yourself. These small actions appear insignificant on their own, but over time, they become your character, and character determines destiny. One of the greatest traps in life is the need to impress people today. We buy things we cannot afford to appear successful. We exaggerate accomplishments to earn admiration. We rush achievements because we fear being left behind. But applause is temporary. Character is permanent. Ask yourself this question: would you rather look successful or become successful? The difference may seem small. It is enormous. Looking successful satisfies the ego. Becoming successful satisfies your future. The ego demands immediate recognition. Wisdom invests quietly. Imagine two friends beginning their careers on the same day. The first spends every paycheck upgrading their lifestyle. Expensive clothes, luxury cars, impressive vacations. Their success becomes visible. The second lives differently. They invest in books, new skills, meaningful relationships, long-term opportunities. For years, the first appears more successful, but 10 years later, the second has built something the first cannot buy: freedom. This is the power of delayed gratification, the willingness to sacrifice something small today for something extraordinary tomorrow. Psychologists have studied this idea for decades. Again and again, they found that people capable of resisting immediate rewards often achieve better outcomes later in life, not because they were more intelligent, because they understood timing. Timing is everything. The fruit picked too early is sour. The fruit picked too late has already spoiled. Wisdom knows when to wait. Patience is not passive. It is active preparation. While others chase quick victories, patient people build strong foundations. Foundations are invisible. No one applauds them. Yet every great building depends upon them. Imagine constructing a skyscraper. Would you rush the foundation just because no one can see it? Of course not. The higher the building, the deeper the foundation must be. Success follows the same law. If your ambitions are great, your preparation must be even greater. This is why trust cannot be rushed. Trust grows slowly. One honest conversation. One kept a promise. One act of integrity. Again and again, like bricks laid one at a time. Eventually, those bricks become something unshakable. Many people spend years trying to build influence, then destroy it in one careless moment. Trust is difficult to earn, easy to lose, almost impossible to fake. That is why consistency matters more than intensity. Anyone can act with discipline for 1 week. Anyone can appear generous for 1 day. But consistency reveals character. People don't trust perfection. They trust reliability. They trust the person who continues showing up long after the excitement has disappeared. The marathon always exposes those who are only prepared for a sprint. Life is far more marathon than sprint. Yet so many people exhaust themselves trying to arrive first. They compare their beginning to someone else's middle. They measure their progress against carefully edited images of success. Comparison steals patience. Patience protects purpose. Remember this. You cannot rush becoming the person your dreams require. The person capable of handling great responsibility is not created overnight. Strength is built through repetition. Discipline is built through repetition. Wisdom is built through repetition. The greatest achievements rarely happen because of one extraordinary decision. They happen because of thousands of ordinary ones. There is another reward for playing the long game: peace. When you stop chasing immediate validation, life becomes quieter. You no longer panic because someone else succeeded first. You no longer feel pressure to prove yourself every day. You stop asking, "How do I get ahead today?" and begin asking, "Who am I becoming?" That question changes everything, because becoming lasts longer than achieving. Achievements can be taken away. Money can disappear. Titles can change. Fame can fade. But the person you become remains. There will always be shortcuts. There will always be opportunities to sacrifice integrity for speed. There will always be people who appear to succeed overnight. Do not envy them. You rarely see the full story. And even when success comes quickly, sustaining it requires a character that only time can build. A tree with shallow roots may grow quickly, but the first strong storm can bring it crashing down. A tree with deep roots grows more slowly, yet it stands through seasons that destroy everything around it. Be the second tree. Choose depth over speed. Choose consistency over excitement. Choose preparation over performance. Play the long game. Because life is remarkably fair to those who remain patient. The world may not reward your effort today. It may not notice your discipline tomorrow. It may overlook your quiet progress for years. But time has a way of revealing what shortcuts can never produce. In the end, the people who seem to succeed overnight are often those who spent years working while no one was watching. Their victory wasn't sudden. Only your awareness of it was. So stop measuring your life by today's applause. Measure it by tomorrow's legacy. Plant the seed. Do the work. Protect your integrity. Trust the process. And keep walking. Because those who are willing to sacrifice the need to impress today are the very ones who build a future that no one can ignore. Chapter 9. Quiet Confidence. Walk into a room full of strangers. Before anyone speaks, you can often sense two very different kinds of people. One person immediately begins telling everyone about their achievements. They mention their job title, their accomplishments, the important people they know. Every sentence seems designed to answer one question before anyone has asked it. Why should you respect me? Across the room stands someone else. They smile. They listen. They speak only when they have something meaningful to add. There is nothing dramatic about them. Nothing loud. Nothing desperate. Yet, somehow, people are drawn to them. Conversations naturally find them. Respect seems to follow them without effort. This is the power of quiet confidence. It cannot be manufactured. It cannot be faked for long. And it never needs to announce itself. Many people confuse confidence with arrogance. On the surface, they can appear similar. Both speak with certainty. Both make decisions. Both believe in themselves. But beneath the surface, they are complete opposites. Arrogance is built on comparison. Confidence is built on character. An arrogant person needs to feel superior. A confident person simply needs to be authentic. Arrogance seeks attention. Confidence creates value. Arrogance demands recognition. Confidence earns respect. The difference may seem subtle. In reality, it changes everything. Imagine two oak trees growing side by side. One tree stretches wildly toward the sky, thin and unstable, desperate to become the tallest. The other grows more slowly. Its roots spread deeper each year. Its trunk becomes stronger. When the storm arrives, height matters less than strength. The first tree breaks. The second remains standing. Confidence grows like the second tree, slowly, quietly, from the inside out. It is rooted in preparation, discipline, and self-respect. Arrogance grows from insecurity. It constantly needs reassurance. Compliments become fuel. Criticism becomes a threat. Without external approval, arrogance begins to collapse. Quiet confidence doesn't depend on applause. It knows its value long before anyone else notices. That is why confident people rarely feel the need to prove themselves. Imagine carrying a diamond in your pocket. Would you spend every conversation convincing people it was real? Of course not. Its value doesn't depend on whether others recognize it. Your character should be the same. When you know who you are, you stop chasing validation from people who barely know your name. One of the clearest signs of confidence is comfort with silence. The insecure often rush to fill every pause. They explain too much. They defend themselves before being questioned. They oversell every achievement. Confidence is different. It trusts that the truth will reveal itself over time. It allows curiosity to replace performance. It lets actions do the talking. The world often rewards those who speak loudly, but history remembers those who produce lasting results. Think about a master craftsman. They don't spend hours describing how skilled they are. They simply build. When someone sees the finished work, no explanation is necessary. Excellence speaks a language everyone understands. Your life should become your greatest argument, not your words, not your promises, not your intentions, your actions. Promises create expectations. Results create belief. This is why disciplined people often appear ordinary in the beginning. They aren't busy announcing what they plan to become. They're becoming it. Quietly, patiently. One day, people suddenly notice their success. What they don't see are the years spent preparing for that moment. There's another reason quiet confidence is so powerful. It gives other people room to shine. Insecure people compete for every spotlight. Confident people aren't threatened by someone else's success. They celebrate it. They encourage it. They understand that another person's brilliance does not diminish their own. The sun never competes with the moon. Each serves its purpose. Likewise, truly confident people don't waste energy comparing themselves to everyone around them. Comparison is the language of insecurity. Growth is the language of confidence. Imagine climbing a mountain. If you spend the entire journey looking sideways at other climbers, you will lose your footing. But if you keep your eyes on your own path, every step brings you closer to the summit. Life works exactly the same way. Your greatest competition is not another person. It is the version of yourself you were yesterday. Become a little wiser, a little kinder, a little more disciplined every single day. That is enough. Confidence also changes how you handle criticism. An arrogant person hears criticism and immediately becomes defensive. Their identity feels attacked. A confident person listens first. They ask, is there truth in this? If there is, they improve. If there isn't, they move on. Not every opinion deserves emotional investment. People will misunderstand you. Some will underestimate you. Others will criticize choices they could never understand. You cannot control their opinions, but you can control your response. Confidence says, I know who I am. Arrogance says, you must know who I am. Notice the difference. One looks inward. The other constantly looks outward. There's freedom in no longer needing everyone to approve of you. You stop explaining every decision. You stop defending every dream. You stop chasing every opportunity to impress. Instead, you focus on becoming, because becoming always outlasts appearing. There's an old image worth remembering. A river never drinks its own water. A tree never eats its own fruit. The sun does not shine for itself. True strength exists to create value, not admiration. Quiet confidence follows the same principle. It doesn't ask, how can I look impressive? It asks, how can I become useful? Useful people become respected. Respected people become trusted. Trusted people become influential. Influence earned through service lasts far longer than influence earned through attention. One day, someone will ask how you became successful. They will see the confidence, the calmness, the discipline, the reputation. What they won't see are the countless mornings you chose consistency over comfort, the evenings you kept working while others sought approval, the opportunities you declined because they compromise your integrity. Quiet confidence is never built in public. It is built in private. It is built every time you keep a promise to yourself. Every time you choose discipline over distraction. Every time you stay humble despite success. Eventually, people begin noticing something different about you. You don't seem desperate. You don't seek attention. You don't chase validation. And strangely, that makes you unforgettable. Because in a world where everyone is trying to be seen, the person who simply focuses on becoming valuable stands apart. Remember this. Empty barrels make the loudest noise. The deepest rivers flow with the least sound. Be the river. Let your discipline become your reputation. Let your integrity become your introduction. Let your work become your voice. You don't need to announce your greatness. If it is real, time will announce it for you. And when your character, your actions, and your results begin speaking together, you will become impossible to ignore, not because you demanded attention, but because you earned respect. Chapter 10, The Invisible Winner. Imagine watching an iceberg drift across the ocean. From a distance, it doesn't seem particularly impressive. Only a small portion rises above the surface. Most people see what is visible and assume that is all there is, but beneath the water lies nearly 90% of its true size. Its greatest strength is hidden. People are much the same. We live in a culture that celebrates what can be seen: the applause, the awards, the wealth, the followers, the recognition. Yet the qualities that create lasting success are almost always invisible. Discipline, patience, humility, emotional control, integrity. These cannot be photographed. They cannot be measured by popularity, but they determine everything. Throughout this journey, we have explored a series of ideas that may seem separate: being underestimated, mastering your ego, listening more than speaking, protecting your plans, making others feel valued, remaining a lifelong student, controlling your emotions, playing the long game, building quiet confidence. At first glance, these appear to be different strategies. They are not. They are expressions of a single philosophy, a philosophy that says, the strongest person is the one who no longer needs to prove they are strong. Think about water. It rarely fights the rock. It doesn't argue with it. It doesn't try to overpower it. Instead, it flows patiently, consistently, year after year. Eventually, the hardest stone begins to change, not because water was more aggressive, because it was more persistent. There's a lesson hidden in that image. Many people spend their lives trying to force outcomes. They force conversations. They force relationships. They force success. They force respect. And in doing so, they create resistance everywhere they go. The invisible winner moves differently. They understand that not every obstacle requires confrontation. Sometimes the wisest path is adaptation. Sometimes patience is stronger than pressure. Sometimes silence achieves what arguments never could. This does not mean becoming passive. It means becoming intentional. There is an enormous difference. A river appears gentle, yet over centuries, it carves canyons through mountains. Quiet does not mean weak. Slow does not mean ineffective. Invisible does not mean insignificant. One of the greatest misconceptions about success is that extraordinary people are fundamentally different from everyone else. In reality, they often appear remarkably ordinary. They wake up early. They honor their commitments. They continue learning. They remain calm under pressure. They keep showing up long after excitement has disappeared. Nothing about these actions seems extraordinary until you repeat them for years. Greatness is rarely created by dramatic moments. It is built through ordinary actions performed with extraordinary consistency. Imagine two bricks. On their own, neither seems important. Add another, then another. Eventually, they become a cathedral. Nobody admires a single brick. They admire what thousands of bricks became together. Your daily habits are those bricks. Every choice matters. Every conversation matters. Every act of discipline matters. Even when no one notices. Especially when no one notices. There's another reason ordinary people become extraordinary. They stop chasing appearances. Many spend their lives trying to look successful. The invisible winner focuses on becoming successful. That difference changes everything. Looking successful depends on other people's opinions. Becoming successful depends on your own actions. Opinions change. Actions accumulate. Time always rewards accumulation. There will always be people who misunderstand your quiet nature. Some will mistake your patience for weakness. Others will mistake your humility for a lack of confidence. Do not let that trouble you. The eagle does not explain itself to sparrows. The mountain does not defend its height. Truth has no urgency to prove itself. Remember the first chapter. Being underestimated is an advantage. Now, after everything we've explored, you understand why. Because people only judge what they can see. They cannot see your discipline. They cannot see your preparation. They cannot see the conversations you've had with yourself, the temptations you've resisted, the mornings you chose growth over comfort, the evenings you chose learning over distraction. Those victories remain invisible until one day their results become impossible to hide. Success often surprises everyone except the person who earned it. To the outside world, it appears sudden. To the invisible winner, it is simply the harvest of years spent planting. This is why comparison is so dangerous. You are comparing someone's visible harvest to your invisible roots. Never do that. Roots always come before fruit. One of the most powerful questions you can ask yourself each day is not, how can I get ahead? But, who am I becoming? Because life eventually gives you opportunities equal to the person you have become. Not the person you pretend to be. Not the person you advertise. The person you truly are. Character attracts responsibility. Integrity attracts trust. Patience attracts opportunity. Wisdom attracts influence. These things cannot be chased directly. They are earned indirectly. That is the secret. Stop chasing success. Start becoming the kind of person success naturally follows. There is tremendous freedom in this philosophy. You no longer need to compete with everyone. You no longer need to win every argument. You no longer need to impress every stranger. Your attention returns to the only life you can truly shape. Your own. Imagine carrying a lantern through a dark forest. Its light reaches only a few steps ahead. You cannot see the entire journey, only the next step. Yet if you continue walking, step after step, eventually you arrive. Life rarely reveals a whole path. It only asks the courage to take the next right step. Trust that. Trust the process. Trust the quiet work no one applauds. Because every meaningful life is built exactly that way. Not through one spectacular moment, but through thousands of invisible choices. And perhaps that is the greatest lesson of all. You do not need to become louder to become stronger. You do not need to become more visible to become more valuable. You do not need to convince the world that you matter. Simply become the kind of person whose actions speak louder than words. The kind of person who remains humble after success, calm during chaos, patient in uncertainty, curious in every season, disciplined when no one is watching, and kind when there is nothing to gain. Those qualities rarely make headlines, but they build remarkable lives. Years from now, people may look at your success and call you fortunate. They may call you gifted. They may even call you extraordinary. Smile quietly, because you will know the truth. Extraordinary people are not born extraordinary. They become extraordinary by doing ordinary things. Extraordinarily well for an extraordinarily long time. That is the path of the invisible winner. Walk it patiently. Walk it humbly. Walk it consistently. And one day, without ever demanding attention, the world will wonder how someone so ordinary became so extraordinary. Conclusion: the quiet path to an extraordinary life. If you made it this far, you probably noticed something. This book was never really about acting dumb. It was about acting wisely. The title was meant to challenge your assumptions, because the goal was never to become less intelligent. The goal was to become intelligent enough to know when your intelligence doesn't need to be displayed. There's a profound difference. Anyone can demand attention. Few can command respect. Anyone can speak. Few know when silence is more powerful. Anyone can chase recognition. Few have the patience to let recognition find them. Throughout this journey, we've explored 10 simple principles. Be underestimated. Master your ego. Listen more than you speak. Keep your plans close. Make others feel valued. Remain a lifelong student. Control your emotions. Play the long game. Develop quiet confidence. Become the invisible winner. Individually, each lesson is valuable. Together, they become a way of living. A philosophy built on one simple truth. Your greatest power is often the power you never have to display. Think about the strongest forces in the universe. Gravity never announces itself. Time never argues. The roots of a tree grow silently beneath the earth, yet they support everything above. The most powerful things often work quietly. Perhaps that is how we should live. Not chasing every opportunity to impress. Not fighting every battle. Not responding to every criticism. Not proving ourselves to people who have already decided who we are. Instead, growing, learning, observing, building, patiently, every day, The world will tempt you to do the opposite. It will reward noise. It will encourage comparison. It will convince you that your worth depends on likes, titles, income, followers, applause, and recognition. Don't believe it. Those things may attract attention, but they cannot create fulfillment. Fulfillment comes from becoming someone you respect when no one else is watching. Imagine standing in front of a mirror at the end of your life. Your possessions won't stand beside you. Your reputation won't stand beside you. Your job, title won't stand beside you. Only one person will. You. The question won't be, how many people admire me? The question will be, did I become the person I was capable of becoming? That is the only competition that truly matters. Not against your neighbor. Not against your colleagues. Not against strangers on the internet. Against yesterday's version of yourself. Become a little wiser, a little calmer, a little kinder, a little more disciplined. Every single day. Small improvements rarely feel important in the moment, but over months, over years, they quietly transform your life. A single drop of water seems insignificant, yet millions of drops carve valleys through mountains. Never underestimate consistency. Remember the bamboo tree. For years, nothing appears above the ground. Many assume nothing is happening, but beneath the surface, an extraordinary foundation is growing. Then, almost suddenly, it rises. People call it an overnight success. It wasn't. It was years of invisible growth. Your life will often feel the same. There will be seasons when no one notices your effort. No one applauds your discipline. No one recognizes your sacrifices. Continue anyway, because character grows in silence, and silence eventually produces results that noise never can. There is one final lesson worth remembering. You cannot control how people see you. Some will underestimate you. Some will misunderstand you. Some will doubt you. Let them. Their opinions are not your responsibility. Your responsibility is your character, your actions, your integrity, your growth. The people who matter will eventually recognize those qualities. The people who don't were never your audience to begin with. Live in such a way that your peace no longer depends on other people's approval. That is freedom. Speak with intention. Listen with humility. Lead with kindness. Work with discipline. Win with grace. Lose with dignity. And when success finally arrives, wear it lightly. Because the strongest person in the room is rarely the one trying to look strong. It is the one who has nothing left to prove. One day, someone may ask you the secret to your success. They may expect a complicated answer, but perhaps you'll simply smile. Because you'll know there was never one secret. There were only small choices, made consistently, made quietly, made with patience. While others chase attention, you chase mastery. While others sought applause, you sought growth. While others want to be seen, you chose to become. And that made all the difference. Thank you for taking this journey. Now the book is over, but your real journey begins today. Walk quietly. Think deeply, learn constantly, serve generously, and let your life become the loudest statement you'll ever make. Because in the end, the people who leave the greatest mark on the world are rarely the ones who spent their lives trying to be noticed. They are the ones who spent their lives becoming impossible to ignore.